Hi, it's Crystal.
I'm Munazza.
And today we will be discussing two photographs from our photo journal project.
In particular, we'll be taking a look at Yelena's photo entitled Disco in the Street and Hannah's photo entitled The Light Below.
Both of these photos are going to reflect a common element that we will discuss later on in this video.
So the first photo that we're going to take a look at is Hannah's photo entitled The Light Below. Hannah's photo journal explored the idea of shadows in NYC. That was her theme.
It's really interesting that a theme of shadows, because it almost makes you wonder, like, what is a shadow? How do you play it off of the real substantial thing that is there? I guess a really big part of this picture is the focal point.
Exactly, it's taken in one-point perspective. So the gate, the real gate, and the shadow meet at one point, and that draws our attention to where they meet. And by drawing attention to where they meet, it causes the viewer to question the relationship between the real gate and the insubstantial shadow.
And speaking of the relationship, I found it very intriguing how the gate, looks normal size, and then the shadow, however, has an almost eerie, majestic look to it, which could also make us question where exactly is the light coming from.
Like, what's the light source? Yeah, that's something that also is confusing to me, because there's a surreal aspect to the photo, because there's a neon pink and blue and a little bit of like a highlighter yellow towards the bottom right-hand corner. It makes us question whether it's photoshopped or not, or if this is taken in actuality.
Speaking of Photoshop, when we were discussing it, we also brought up the idea of the light colors versus the dark colors, and whether it is Photoshopped or not. We really feel that Hannah was able to capture the contrast between the dark and light and really capture the enhancement of the colors.
And whether photoshopped or not, the neon colors give the photo a surreal effect to it. So ultimately, very successful.
And if you look at it clearly on the actual fence, it's almost intriguing how there is a distinct line between where the pink and where the blue starts. And I just keep wondering, where exactly was she able to find this picture and this scene, and where exactly the neon colors came from.
And Crystal, speaking of, you said there is a distinct line between the blue and the pink. I think there's distinct lines everywhere as well. Hannah's photo captures strong geometric structures, particularly the gate, the rigid, firm, straight lines of the gate, and also the straight lines of the shadow. Even though the shadow is kind of at a diagonal, the lines aren't going in a straight direction, but they are indeed straight.
I think that also helps organize the picture, in a sense that we already have the one-point perspective, but also everywhere you look, even in the far left side of the picture, you have straight lines. It just kind of brings the whole photo together. Next, we will be talking about Yelena's picture, Disco in the Street.
Yelena's photojournal theme was capturing reflections in New York, which is one of the reasons that we initially chose this photo, because it was confusing to us, and it took us a while to figure out what exactly was there and what was not there.
I completely agree with you. If you look at the main point of the picture, which is the green lights, it took us a while to realize which ones were real, which ones were not, until we figured out that it was just a reflection from the inside. And if you compare each one of them to the other, they kind of increase in their transparency.
I think your point is really interesting. Reflections kind of create layers to the photo. It has an effect of adding complexity to it, and we as viewers then begin to question what is there and what is not there.
And speaking of what is and is not, it's kind of interesting, the whole surrounding of the picture itself, considering that when it was taken in New York City, the city is something characterized by constant movement.
It's dynamic, it's fluid.
And yet when you look at this picture, you really point out the details to it. There are stop signs everywhere, and there's light, and she was able to capture a standstill in the city, which is something that's really hard to find.
You're absolutely right. If you take a look at the leftmost side, there's a don't walk sign, and also right above the reflection of the disco, there's a red light. And all the cars are standing completely still, and it seems like an anomaly that Yelena's photo would capture an image that is completely frozen in time. And if we think about a photo as kind of like a standstill or a frozen moment in time, this is the perfect epitome of that.
Yeah, just like Sontag had mentioned, it's it's right there for you. There's no, deciphering any messages there. But that is what really intrigued us about both of the photos.
Exactly. There's real objects and transposed images through the glass, and that causes us to question the perceived transparency of the inherent nature of the glass, and it's misleading to the viewer's naked eye, but once you take a look at each aspect of the photo, the meaning becomes more clear. And there's also something insubstantial about the reflections of the disco balls and the real street scene that Yelena captured.
And that's really the main focus behind our video essay, and the element that really brought these two pictures together. How when we look at it, it's so easy to think one thing, and then once you really dissect the pictures, you're able to kind of point out how you're being deceived and what you think is there and what is not.
I absolutely agree with you, Crystal. There's both of these photos have a common element, that their focus is something insubstantial. Hannah captures shadows and Yelena captures reflections. Those are not real objects. Their photos are not images of objects. They're images of weightless things, intangible things. But it's interesting to note that these intangible things have a meaning to them, and they contribute to the complexity of their photos.
I completely agree with you, and the fact that may or may not even realize how other meanings were able to play into their photos. Hannah with all the lines really was able to focus the picture, and Yelena with the standstill of New York City. I feel that it really adds to the majestic parts of both of these photos, which is why we decided to choose them.
That's absolutely right. All right, Crystal.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, Munazza.
And you as well.
And thank you for joining us.